Hello everyone and welcome to today's 6th grade ELA lesson. I created a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share it with all of you. Okay, and so our topic today is Greek and Latin roots. So I'm going to start off this lesson by reading a passage. "Let me redo that," said my friend, as she rewrote some notes she had hastily scribbled down. I replayed the scene in my head and thought about how wonderful it is to retry things. If you don't get it right the first time, you can always try again. Quickly, slowly, at whatever pace it takes, until you are successful. Success is a delightful, wonderful feeling, and it can make a person feel quite cheerful and friendly, whether he or she celebrates this success via telephone or on television. And this passage connects directly to our lesson because if we look at these colored and underlined parts of the words, that's kind of going to be the focus of our lessons, which is Greek and Latin roots. So we've got re and full and li for quickly and slowly and tele. These are all Greek and Latin roots or their prefixes or their suffixes. So that's going to be the focus of our lesson today. Okay, so for today's agenda, we will be reviewing some vocabulary and going over some examples. After that, we will be identifying prefixes versus suffixes. Then we'll be having a vocabulary dictionary search with Greek and Latin roots. And then we'll be able to create our own Greek and Latin vocabulary sentences. And finally, we will recap and conclude the lesson. So for your materials, you will need paper and a pencil, and you'll also need a dictionary because we'll be looking up some definitions of different words. Okay, so our learning goal is I can identify Greek and Latin affixes and roots and use these as clues to the meaning of a word. So that is our goal for today. Okay, so let's start off with some vocabulary. So our first vocabulary word is root or root word. And this is a word with no prefix or suffix, and I'll explain in a moment what those are. So basically, a root word is the most basic part of a word. It's kind of like the foundation, the starting points for a word. So that is root word. So if you can copy down that definition on your piece of paper, that'd be great. So I'll give you time to pause the video and copy down that definition. Now I also want to provide some examples. So for example, with the root word happy, you can make these words. You can make unhappy, happiness, happily. All of these are based off of the root word happy. So if you want, you can also write down all of these examples for the root word happy. Now also note that not all root words can stand alone. So the root word happy can stand alone, meaning that it's a word in and of itself, but some root words cannot stand alone. For example, take fracture. The fract and fracture is the root word. So fract is the root word, but fract can't really stand by itself. It needs the U-R-E in order to become like a full word in English, so fracture, based off of that root word fract. Okay, so those are root words. And a Greek or Latin root forms the basis of a new word, but it's not usually a word by itself. So for example, with the Greek root tele, is not really a word in and of itself, but if it's combined with other things, then it can become a word. And tele means far off. So you can make these words using the Greek root tele. You can say television or telephone or telescopic. Notice that they all have tele in it, but then adding different letters makes different words, even though they all have the same root. Okay, so our next vocabulary word is an affix, and an affix is the letter or letters that are added to a root word to change its meaning, and this can include prefixes and suffixes. Okay, so now we're going to learn what a prefix is, and you'll be hearing this term a lot throughout this lesson. So a prefix is the letter or letters that are added to the beginning of a root word to change its meaning. So it's really important to remember that prefix is for the beginning of a root word. So for example, with the prefix re, or in Latin re, you can make these words. You can make redo, retry, rewrite, and replay. They all use the prefix re, which kind of means again. It's like do again, or try again, or write again, rewrite, or play again, that kind of thing. So again, re means again. And so these are some words that you can make using the prefix re. Other examples include if you have the prefix pre, then you could add it to the beginning of the word test to make pretest. Or if you have the prefix un, then you can add it to the root word well to make unwell. So again, you can see that a prefix is added to the beginning of a root word to change its meaning. So at this time, you can copy down whichever information you think would be handy to know in the slide. So I'll give you time to pause the video and copy down the information. All right, so quick exercise now. How many words can we think of that have the following prefix? Miss. So basically miss something like misconstrue or mishap or misplace. Those are the kinds of words that I'm looking for. So I want you to brainstorm some words that have the prefix miss and write them down on your piece of paper. So you can pause the video and do that. Awesome. So here are some sample answers. There's obviously like a lot more answers, but these are just a few of them. So if you have a word that's not on this list, extra wonderful job. Okay, so some sample answers that use the prefix miss are mislead, misinform, misread, misheard, mistrust, misbehave, misspell, mistake, mishap, and misplace. And again, there's a lot of other ones too. Okay, so those were prefixes, remembering that prefixes are at the beginning of a root word. Now there's something that's the opposite of a prefix, and this is called a suffix. And a suffix is letter or letters that are added to the end of a root word to change its meaning. So again, prefix was for the beginning of a root word. Suffix is for the end of the root word. So for example, with the suffix full, meaning just F-U-L, you can make these words: wonderful, beautiful, successful, cheerful. So in other words, full of wonder, full of beauty, full of success, full of cheerfulness, or full of happiness. Okay, so again, that was using the suffix full. The suffix is always going to be added to the end of a root word to change its meaning. So I'll let you pause the video and write down this definition of a suffix as well as the examples. All right, so now I wanted to give some more examples of suffixes because suffixes are not just for FUL, full. There can be a whole lot of other suffixes. So some of these other ones include ly, like from quick to quickly, adding that ly, that ly, or even to make something plural, like adding an s, from dog to dogs, or a past tense ed, from walk to walked, or ing, from walk to walking, or even able, like reliable, or less, to taste less. So you can see that all of these suffixes are being added to the end of the root word. Okay, so similar to the prefix exercise, we're going to do a suffix exercise. So how many words can we think of that have the following suffix: able or able? So I'm thinking of things like enable or reliable. Words like that. What words have the suffix able or able? So you can use a dictionary too if you want, or you can research it, whatever you prefer. And so I want you to write down on your piece of paper as many words you can think of that have the suffix able or able. So I'll let you pause the video and do that. Okay, so some examples are enable, unable, likable, debatable, adaptable, capable, adorable, preferable, knowledgeable, reliable, and believable. And if you have something that was not on this list, extra bonus. Okay, so we discussed prefixes and suffixes, and adding a prefix and or suffix to a word can change its meaning. So I'm going to give some examples. So say we have the word cook. If we add the prefix un to the beginning of the word cook, then we would get uncook. And if we add the suffix ed at the end, we would get our new word of uncooked. So notice that this word has completely changed meaning from the original one. First we have cook, which can be just a noun, someone who is a cook, or it could be a verb, someone is cooking something. But with our new word uncooked, this is an adjective, and it's like a completely, well, it has a similar meaning, but its meaning is changed. We go from cook to uncooked. So again, when we add prefixes and or suffixes, it becomes a new word that has a changed meaning. So I'll give another example. So say we have the word organize, and I want to add the prefix dis, so it's going to become disorganized. If I want to add the suffix ed, then our new word becomes dis, which is our prefix, organize, which is our word, our original word, and ed for our suffix, so it becomes disorganized. So organize, the original word, and disorganized, the new word, have completely different meanings. And again, we added those prefixes and suffixes to change the meaning of the word. So now we get to do a new activity, which is identifying whether the underlined part is a prefix or a suffix. So using your knowledge of what you just learned. Okay, so our first word is tasteless. And so I'll walk you through this example. So tasteless, is less going to be a prefix at the beginning of the word or a suffix added to the end of the word? Well, less is at the end of the word. It's not at the beginning. It's not less taste. It's tasteless is at the end of the word. So this is going to be a suffix. What about supermarket? So market is our root word, and we add super to the beginning of market for supermarket. So is super a prefix or a suffix? Super is a prefix because it's added to the beginning of the root word, which was market, to make supermarket. So again, less is a suffix because it's at the end of the word. Super is a prefix because it's at the beginning of the word. All right, next one. Identify whether the underlined part is a prefix or suffix for the word impossible. So is im going to be a prefix at the beginning or a suffix at the end? If you said im is for the beginning, you are correct. It is indeed a prefix. What about pretest? Our root word is test, and is pre going to be a prefix or a suffix? If you said it is a prefix, you are correct. It happens at the beginning of the word. So again, both of these are prefixes. Both im and pre happen at the beginning of the word, so they are prefixes. Okay, what about this? So we've got excitable. Is able going to be a prefix added to the beginning of a word or a suffix added to the end of a word? If you said that it's a if you said that this is a suffix, then you are correct. It is at the end of the word. It's after the root word. Okay, what about respectful? Prefix or suffix? If you said that full in respectful is a suffix, you are correct. That's because it's at the end of the sentence. All right, and we have, I think, one more. Okay, so refill. Is refill, the re in refill, going to be a prefix added to the beginning or a suffix added to the end? If you said it's a prefix, you are correct. It's at the beginning. It's before the root word. What about unequal? Prefix or suffix for un? If you said it's a prefix, you are correct. It is at the beginning of the word. Okay, Now I think this is the last one. Fearless and predetermined. So we'll go with fearless first. So is list going to be prefix or suffix? If you said suffix, you are correct. It happens at the end of the word. What about predetermined, which means that it's already been determined? That's what that definition is. But predetermined, is the pre going to be prefix or a suffix? If you said a prefix, you are correct. Nice job. All right, so moving on to a new exercise. We have Greek and Latin roots, vocabulary dictionary search. Okay, so I'm going to explain how this goes. So you have a root word on the left-hand side, and you also have two vocabulary words. So basically, you're going to have 3 steps. So you will write each word and its definition. So here you'll have factory, and you'll write its definition, and then manufacture, and you'll write its definition. After that, you'll write the part of speech for each word. So whether it's a noun, meaning a person, place, or thing, or whether it's a verb, which is an action or state of being, or if it's an adjective, meaning that it describes something. Maybe it helps enhance a noun, things like that. Okay, so you'll write the part of speech, and then your last step is to write another word that uses that same root. So you can use research for this, or a dictionary, or a similar resource. So I know that that was a lot of information, so I'm going to show it through an example. So you won't have to do this one because you'll have other ones. Okay, so the first step is write each word and its definition. So I wrote factory, and I wrote manufacture, and then I defined them. I said, and again, you can use your dictionary or research. I said a factory is a building where many items are made. And then I said manufacture means to make something using machinery. For the second step, I wrote the part of speech. So I said factory is going to be a noun because it's a thing. A building is a thing. Manufacture is going to be a verb because it's an action, to make something using machinery. So I wrote the part of speech for each word. After that, I wrote another word that uses that same root. So I wrote 2 of these. So I've got faculty and benefactor. Both of them use the root word of fac. So F-A-C, to do, to make. So faculty and benefactor. And you might come up with other words too. One last thing that I wanted to point out, my definitions, and yours don't have to do this, but it'd be cool if they did. My definitions tend to match directly with the root word. So fac, meaning to do, to make. We have a building where many items are made. Manufacture, to make something using machinery. So notice made, make, to do, to make. They all kind of connect with each other. Okay, so to recap, you'll write each word in its definition. You'll write the part of speech for each word, and you'll write some other words that use that same root. So I'll give one more example before you get to do your own. So say I have my root circum, which means around. And my vocabulary words are circumference and circumstance. So first you'll write each word in its definition. So I wrote circumference and I wrote circumstance. I defined circumference using my dictionary and research. Circumference as the distance around an object. Notice we have around here and around here, so they're consistent. And then I defined circumstance as a fact or condition around an event. So again, we have that connection with around. Then I wrote the part of speech for each noun, for each word. Circumference is a noun, and circumstance is also a noun. And finally, I wrote another word that uses that same root. Other words were circumscribe and circumnavigate. And again, you can use your research to help you with these words. We have poly, which means many, and that's our root. And so we have polygon and polyhedron. And so we need to first write each word and its definition. Then we will write the part of speech for each word. And then we will write another word that uses that same root. So I will let you pause your video and do those 3 steps. Awesome. So now let's check our work. So as a sample answer, Yours may look a little different, and that's perfectly fine as long as it follows the same general gist of it. Okay, so I wrote down my word polygon, and I said polygon is a noun, and it's a two-dimensional shape that can have many, notice that it connects with this definition, many different sides. And a polyhedron, this other vocabulary word, is a noun, and it's a three-dimensional shape that can have many plane faces. So this might be like a new term, but this is what a polyhedron might look like. Other words that use poly are polynomial, polytechnic, and other words too. Okay, next one. We have equi meaning equal. So our vocabulary words are equilateral and equidistant. So you get to follow these 3 steps, writing each word in its definition, writing this part of speech for each word, and writing another word that uses that same root, whether you're using your dictionary, research, or another source. So I'll let you pause the video and follow those 3 steps. Awesome, so now let's check our work. So I wrote down equilateral. Equilateral is an adjective, and it means having all its sides equal lengths, such as an equilateral triangle. Another word is equidistant, which is also an adjective, and it means at equal distances. So if like 2 points or 3 points are equidistant, they're all at equal distances to each other. Other words that use equi as the root include equivalency, equilibrium, among other words. So let's try one more. Okay, so I have my root word, which is cent, which means 100. And you may think of this as like a penny, like 100 pennies make $1. So cent, again, means 100. And so our vocabulary words are century and percent. So you're going to follow these 3 steps. You'll write each word in its definition, write the part of speech for each word, so whether it's a noun, verb, or adjective, and then you'll write another word that uses that same root. And again, you can use research, a dictionary, another source, anything along those lines. So I'll let you pause the video and complete these 3 steps. Okay, so now let's check our work. So I wrote down both vocabulary words. Century is a noun, and it means 100 years. So you can see that direct correlation with our vocabulary definition of 100 years. Okay, we also have the vocabulary word percent, which can be both a noun and an adverb. And so the definition that I decided to include is percent as 1 part in every 100. For example, 1% is 1 out of 100%. Okay, other words using the root word of cent include centurion, that's someone who commands 100 men, or centimeter, or centennial. Those are all words with that root word of cent. Okay, let's go on to another activity. This is vocabulary sentences using some of our vocabulary terms, and you get to create your own sentences. So you can refer to the definitions that you wrote down to write a sentence using one of these words. Or if you don't have a definition for these particular words, you can also research them, look them up, or a handy resource is your dictionary. Your dictionary will also provide definitions for these words. And so you get to write down a sentence using one of these words. But if you want to, you can always, as a bonus, do all 3 words. We will have some more vocabulary words coming up too, so it's your choice. So whether you choose 1 or 3 vocabulary words, if you can write down a sentence using those terms. All right, so at this time you can pause your video and write down a sentence. Awesome. So sentences that could work, although yours probably look a little different, are the audience, that's this one here, clapped enthusiastically after her performance. Or if you use the word aquarium, the aquarium had many kinds of fish in it. And then for audition, she had to audition for the leading role in that play. So audience uses the root word aud, which means to hear. aquarium uses the root word aqua, which means water. So the container full of water, which is aquarium, had many kinds of fish in it. And then audition has that root word aud, which means to hear. She had to audition, she had to try it out for the leading role in that play. All right, our next slide, we have the words century, portable, and transportation. So again, you can use your dictionary or another resource. And you can refer to the definitions, whether you wrote them down or if you have them in your dictionary, to write a sentence using one of these words. So I'll let you pause the video and do that. All right, so some potential sentences are, there are 100 years in a century. So notice that in the sentence, I kind of define what a century is, which is 100 years. Then for the word portable, we have the glass jar was light and easily portable. And portable means that it's able to be carried. And then for the word transportation, I have, we use airplanes, bikes, and cars for transportation. And port means to carry. All right, so your sentences might look completely different, and that is totally fine. All right, next one. We have the words magnificent, magnify, and circumstance. So I want you to write down a sentence that uses at least one of these words. So you can pause the video and do that. All right, so let's check your work. So we've got, his violin performance was magnificent. Then we have, we use this magnifying glass to magnify the object or make it look bigger so that it's easier to see. Notice that I define the word magnify within the sentence by saying make it look bigger. That's the definition of magnify. Then we have, due to the circumstances, they couldn't make it to the play. So basically the events that surround or the events around that. That's what circumstances translates to. So due to the circumstances, the surrounding events, they couldn't make it to the play. So again, these are just sample sentences. So if you had something different, that's perfectly fine. Next ones are fraction, circumference, and equilateral. And these are all math terms. And again, you can refer to your dictionary or to another reliable source to write down a sentence using at least one of these words. Awesome, so now that you're all done with that, here are some sample sentences. The shirt sold for a fraction of its original price. The root fract means to break. So basically you're breaking the original price down into a fraction. So the shirt sold for a fraction, so only a part of its original price. For circumference, we have, to measure the circumference means to measure around a circle. Notice that circum means around, and I included around in the sentence. Then we have an equilateral triangle has 3 equal sides. Equi means equal, so we have equal right here. Lateral means sides, so an equilateral triangle literally has 3 equal sides. That's what the definition, that's what the word translates to. Okay, so our next vocabulary words are polygon, polyhedron, and percent, and some of these will look familiar. So you can write down a sentence using at least one of these words. All right, so some sentences are, a triangle, square, and pentagon are all polygons. Poly meaning they have many, so many sides in this case. For polyhedron, we have a soccer ball, brick, and pyramid are all polyhedrons. And then for percent, we have that meeting had 100% attendance. All the members came. And again, cent means 100. Cent means 100, so 100%. Okay, next vocabulary words are construct, visible, and multitask. Construct, visible, and multitask. So I'll let you pause the video and write down a sentence that uses at least one of these words. So some sample sentenences could be, when will they construct the next building? Struct means build. So when will they be building the next one? Then that tall structure is visible from miles away, meaning that tall structure can be seen from miles away. This meaning see. Then we have, it's hard to multitask or do many things at once. So again, I include the definition, I include many within this sentence. So multi means many. Alrighty. And again, if your sentences look different, that's perfectly fine. The goal of this exercise was just to use these new vocabulary words, some of them may be new, some of them not, to use these vocabulary words in context. And all of these vocabulary words that we had a Latin or Greek root word, which is really nice. So like struct and vis and multi, those are all either Latin or Greek. Okay, so the focus of today's lesson was on Greek and Latin roots, and we also learned about prefixes and suffixes that you can add to these roots to form new words. And so we first started by reviewing some vocabulary and examples. After that, we had an activity where we identified different prefixes and suffixes. Following that, we had our vocabulary dictionary search, which is where we focused on those Greek and Latin roots and words that are derived from those Greek and Latin roots. After that, we created our own vocabulary sentences using words with Greek and Latin roots. And so our learning goal was, I can identify Greek and Latin affixes and roots and use these as clues to the meaning of a word. We also had our vocabulary terms. A root or root word is a word with no prefix or suffix, so nothing at the beginning or end of the word. It's basically just the most basic part of a word. It's that foundation, that starting point. So for example, with the root word happy, we can make these words. We can make unhappy, happiness, happily. They all have that root word of happy, even if it's spelled a little bit differently. And again, not all root words can stand alone. Happy can stand alone, but certain words that are root words, such as Greek or Latin roots, like fract and fracture, cannot stand by itself. It has to have this as well. So again, not all root words can stand alone. We also talked about prefixes, which are the letters added to the beginning of a root word to change its meaning, such as with the prefix re, you can do redo, retry, rewrite, replay. And re means again. So do again, try again, write again, or play again, those kinds of things. Other examples include pre. When you add the suffix or the prefix pre to test, you get a new word, pretest. Or when you add the prefix un to well, you get unwell. So again, prefixes are added to the beginning of a root word. Then we also had suffix, which is kind of like the opposite of prefix, because with a suffix, the letter or letters are added to the end of a root word to change its meaning. So with the suffix full, you can make words like wonderful, beautiful, successful, cheerful, such as full of wonder, full of beauty, full of success, full of cheerfulness, all of those. So again, a suffix is a letter or letters that are added to the end of a word to change its meaning. So I hope that you enjoyed today's lesson. I know that I certainly did, and I will see you back soon for a new one.